Hey guys, what's up? It's Zyflin here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to play Ashe in Warframe in 2019. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel since last year or the year beforehand, you'll know that last year I attempted to make a how to play series, but because of all the content that came out with Fortuna, I didn't get the time to finish it off. So I thought that, hey, because we have a big gap in between updates this year, might be a good idea to make a series showing people how to play their favorite frames and open them up to different ways to build them and all that jazz. So we're going to be doing this in alphabetical order, and I'm going to try to get one of these videos out per week. So to begin with, we're starting with Ashe. And at first glance, if you're a newer player, I'm going to try to keep these videos newer player friendly as well. Maybe a few spoilers here and there if I'm talking about how to integrate focus into the playstyle, but I'll make sure to say if that's the case. But with Ashe, if you take a look at him as a newer player, he's probably going to look like a stealth frame. Well, that's not actually the case. He's more of a DPS frame, or you could even maybe argue that he is a debuffer with one of his playstyles, right? So before I jump in and show you the different ways to play and build this Warframe, I'm going to first go over the passive and the abilities using the new UI screen that was added in this year. So if you head over to your arsenal and you go to abilities, if we hover over passive, we can see that this passive is bleed effects inflicted on enemies do 25% increased damage and last 50% longer. We can move over to his abilities now. So Shuriken launches a spinning blade of pain, dealing high damage and impaling enemies to walls. Below that, you can see the stats for the builds that I'm using, or the build that I'm using, sorry. So we have Drain, which is the amount of energy that it takes per cast. So that's 17.5 with this build. We have the amount of Shurikens, which is 2, which can't be increased whatsoever. We have the damage that it deals, 775, and that is actually slash damage. So if you're new to Warframe, there is different types of damage in the game. This just happens to be slash, and that is communicated to us by the little slash symbol to the left of the damage number, right? So if we back out of this screen, we go ahead and we use the ability. You can see that we just throw 2 shurikens. Pretty straightforward ability, really cool looking. And if you're a newer player, you might be tempted to use that whenever you're trying to stealth around and just the one-shot enemies or attack them from behind type of thing. Can definitely see that, but I'll show you guys a different use moving forward a little bit. So next up we have Smoke Screen, and this is drops a smoke bomb that stuns enemies and obscures their vision, rendering Ashe invisible for a short period of time. So the drain for this is 24.5, duration 16.56, radius 11.5. The stats don't really matter because this is going to be different for everyone else's build. So if you're using a different build to mine, those stats are going to be different, but just with the build that I'm using right now, which I will show you, these are the stats for it. So Smoke Screen looks a little bit like this. So there you go. You just throw down a smoke bomb, and there you go. You're invisible for a short period of time. This is one of the shorter invisibilities in the game. Loki and Octavia have longer duration invisibility, so he's definitely a little weak in that category, but it's still pretty decent to have on this frame because it does have some interesting interactions with other abilities that we'll jump into. So we move on to the next one. This is Teleport. Ashe teleports towards the target. Very important to keep in mind. You have to be actually aiming at something like that you can target, bringing them into melee range and making enemies vulnerable to finishers. So we got to spawn in an enemy for this one. So we go ahead and we get rid of this guy and we spawn in one of these guys. We hop over here and we, I had one spawned in, and we press free. Okay. Target obstructed. Wonder why that is. Just press free, and there you go. We teleport over to him. It's probably because they're like clipping inside one another that it was obstructed, but that's okay. But you teleport over to them, and they stagger a little bit, and then you can use your melee weapon to do a stealth attack on them, which is pretty cool. Again, another reason why you might think that Ashe is more of a stealth frame rather than a damage dealing frame, but finisher attacks are pretty damaging in this game, so there's that. And then last but not least, we have Blade Storm. So project fierce shadow clones of Ashe upon groups of distant enemies. Join the fray using teleport. So basically what this is telling us is that if we use our third ability while our fourth ability is being used, because it's got like a little animation that happens, if we press free, we can join in on that cool animation that is happening, right? So let's just go ahead and test it out versus a group of enemies. So let's go ahead and kill them and spawn in 20 of these guys, simulate. So what's going to happen whenever we press 4 is we're going to enter into like a state of focus. The screen's going to turn a little bit gray. Okay, well, really gray, and we're going to be sort of highlighted red. If we aim at the enemies, they're also going to be highlighted red, and you can see these very faint symbols above the enemy's heads, right? So the more of those symbols they have above them, they can only have a maximum of 3, the more times they're going to be attacked by this ability, right? And every time that you mark, it's going to drain energy from you, right? So once they're all marked, you just go ahead and you press 4 again, or you reactivate the ability, and you'll see that these clones are being sent out. Now, if you press the teleport, then you join in on that cool animation that your clones are doing, right? So it just makes you invulnerable for a short period of time, and yeah, that is pretty much it. It's one of the most damage dealing abilities in the game because it pairs very, very well with Ashe's passive because of the bleed procs. It makes the enemies bleed, and because of Ashe's passive, it deals more damage, and those bleed procs last for longer. So that's pretty cool, right? So if we go ahead and we take a look at the different play styles for Ashe, the first one that I'm going to show you guys is centered around his shuriken ability, right? Now, his shuriken ability has an augment for it, and what augments do is they change up how your ability is used, right? How it interacts with enemies or the world around, whatever. So Seeking Shuriken is the augment that we're using in this case. So hits expose weaknesses on enemies, reducing their armor by 70% for 8 seconds. So that percentage and that duration can be increased by using power strength mods for the percentage, and then of course duration mods for the amount of time, right? So if we get a minimum of 143% power strength or above, it's going to completely remove armor from enemies that we're playing against as Ashe using this build, right? And then of course using duration mods is going to increase the amount of time that that armor stays stripped from the enemy, giving us a longer period of time to kill them, right? So with this build, I'm using a mixture of power strength mods and of course duration mods, and then streamline in there for efficiency as well, so it doesn't cost that much to cast the ability. We want to kind of spam it so we can use it against multiple heavily armored enemies. And the reason that this is a good build is because armored enemies have insane scaling. Like, their effective health shoots way up. So if you can take that armor out of the equation, that's like a bunch of damage reduction that you're taking off the enemy pretty much, right? So your weapons are just going to be dealing more damage, and it's going to allow you to mod for different elements and use different weapons. So instead of limiting yourself to maybe using weapons that are high in puncture damage or corrosive damage, you can instead use weapons that are high in slash damage and gas damage. And because you're modding for slash damage, for example, then you're able to take more of an advantage of Ashe's passive, right? So a stronger or a heavier hitting slash weapon, then pair that with Ashe's passive and then slash procs and whatnot, then you have a lot of DPS potential, okay? So Constitution, Prime Continuity, Augur Message on there for your duration, right? Streamline for your efficiency, Prime Flow so we can have energy. You can swap this off. You don't necessarily need this. You could also maybe swap off Streamline if you're using Energizing Dash, which is just a focus ability that allows you to regen 5 energy per second over 30 seconds, which is pretty good. Seeking Shuriken is a must on here. Umbral Vitality paired with Umbral Intensify. Now, Umbral mods increase the percentage of our Umbral mods, right? So if you have 2 Umbral mods equipped, it's going to increase the percentage of the other one, right? So we can see with Umbral Vitality on here that it has 550%, but if we remove Umbral Intensify, it goes down to 440, and Umbral Intensify on its own is 44%. We throw that on, it goes up to 55%. So even just having Umbral Intensify on its own is going to give you the minimum amount of power strength needed to completely strip away that enemy's armor, because you need 143%. This gives you 44% just without Umbral Vitality, right? And you start off at 100% power strength, right? So as long as you're not using something that takes away power strength, just having Umbral Intensify on its own is going to be enough to completely remove all that enemy's armor. Alternatively, you could use something like Intensify, a regular Intensify plus Power Drift to get that, or maybe even, Intensify Augur Secrets or whatever, whatever you want to use, honestly. So as long as you're getting over 143% power strength with Seeking Shuriken equipped, you're going to completely remove all the enemy's armor. And then I recommend speccing more into duration and whatnot, so the enemy's armor stays stripped for a longer period of time. I've got Cunning Drift on here, and that is for my other abilities. So, your teleport and also your Blade Storm and all that jazz, your stun on your Smoke Bomb, all that good stuff. So to me, just having Cunning Drift on there is enough for Blade Storm and Teleport, because you don't need anything super insane, because the range on those abilities are pretty good from the get-go, right? Your aura mod, I'm using the energy siphon just to regen energy. Because this build is centered around stripping away armor, I'm not using corrosive projection, which is a mod which basically takes away a percentage of the enemy's armor from the get-go, and if you're pairing that with other players using corrosive projection, it completely removes them. I would say if you're in that scenario, I wouldn't even bother using this build because all the enemy's armor is going to be stripped anyway, and instead I'd use something like the Bladestorm build or the Fetal Teleport build. So with that being said, let me show you this in action. I'm going to spawn in a level 165 Bombard and a level 165 Heavy Gunner, both very heavily armored enemies in the game, probably the heaviest armored in the game. So let's go ahead and spawn them in. So we go ahead and we do Heavy Gunner. There's one, and we do our Bombard. There's another one. I make them level 165. So the level of the enemy doesn't matter as long as you have over 143% power strength. No matter the enemy's level or no matter the enemy's armor value, Seeking Shuriken is going to completely strip away the enemy's armor. And the armor of the enemy is communicated to us by that yellow bar, right? So instead of having a red health bar, they have a yellow one. So we go ahead, we throw Seeking Shuriken, we throw two. They both get affected, and then they have a red health bar, which means that slash weapons, such as the Dread, for example, that I'm using right now, are just going to deal a hell of a lot more damage, and you're going to be able to take them out a hell of a lot quicker, right? You're going to just deal more damage to them, which is great. So that is the Seeking Shuriken build. It's awesome. It's super fun to use, especially if you're just playing with a new player or something like that, and you want to show off how much damage you can deal. That would be the build that I would gravitate towards. Let's move on to our Fetal Teleport build. Now, our Fetal Teleport build is centered around, obviously, the teleport ability, and we're using another augment mod. So Ashe is very, very augment heavy, in my opinion, and this one is centered around taking damage and then being able to teleport the enemies to just finish them off, maybe killing a few VIPs. It's especially fun to play around with if you are just trying to sort of role play as a stealth frame, if you want to just, you know, walk around and just one-shot an enemy or something like that. That's what I would use this for. So we've got Streamline and Fleeing Expertise on here to reach that 175 efficiency cap. So you have 100% efficiency at the very, very beginning. 50 plus 25 on your efficiency gives you 75, and it caps out at 175%, like I said. So just having one from the top Streamline, one from the top Fleeing Expertise is enough. Augur Message on there for duration. Pair that with Constitution for more duration, which is just going to give us more duration on our Smoke Bomb, because we can use that in this as well, which in my opinion just helps out a little bit with the whole stealth roleplay type of thing. We've got Hunter Adrenaline on here, so if you do take damage, you can either panic and press Smoke Bomb, or you can panic and press, your Fetal Teleport, right? Your teleport ability to one-shot an enemy. Umbral Fiber on here to increase our armor, plus Umbral Vitality to increase our health, and that's going to just make it so we can take more damage, we can get more energy back from Hunter Adrenaline if we do happen to get caught or whatever. So let's read what Fetal Teleport actually does, because I didn't explain that. Teleport will perform a finisher on the target, dealing 200% extra damage. 50% of energy cost is refunded on kill. So it's just like, keep on constantly spamming teleport to keep your energy up and stuff like that. You'll notice that I don't have flow on here. That's because it's very, very efficient to cast teleport, and you're going to be getting a lot of that energy back anyway from, of course, the augment itself, and also maybe you use Energizing Dash at the start of the mission. You have 5 energy per second anyway. You're getting the energy ore pickups and all that jazz. So yeah, Cunning Drift on here for, of course, the range that I was comfortable with on Bladestorm, Cunning Drift, Smoke Bomb, yada yada yada. And I have Corrosive Projection on here to resist enemies' armor, because, I mean, why not? But you're going to be one-shotting enemies anyway, especially if you're using a dagger with, what's it called? I forget what the mod is called. Let's just go ahead and check it out. Let me see. Covert Lethality, I think it's called. Yeah, Covert Lethality. So you just have a build kind of like this, where you stack damage, you stack corrosive damage, whatever the case may be. And then if we spawn in our Heavy Gunners again, or our Bombards, and we teleport to them with our builds, you can see that it pretty much one-shots them, right? So level 165 enemy, just get one-shot, completely armored, all that jazz. It's just, the bad guy just dies. He drops dead. So that's awesome. That's cool. That's great. Let's move on to Ashe's more interesting build, in my opinion, Bladestorm. Now, this is the build that I would be using if I was playing endgame with Ashe, because this can be buffed up by the likes of Rhino, Chroma. It's got the bleed procs going through armor and all that jazz. It's awesome. So Rising Storm is the augment that we're using. Blade Storm augment, melee multiplier lasts 100% longer before it resets, and that's because your Blade Storm ability actually scales with your combo counter, right? So the higher your combo counter is, the more damage you're going to be dealing with Blade Storm. So being able to keep your melee combo counter up for as long as possible and getting the multiplier as high as possible is definitely what you want to be doing if you're using Blade Storm. So you kind of want to be using Ashe like a melee-centric Warframe, which might seem a little bit weird, but I'll show you ways to increase your multiplier very, very easily to get the most out of Blade Storm. So Augur message on here for duration, because you can actually half the amount of energy that it costs to mark an enemy with Blade Storm if you're invisible. So having duration on there in the form of Augur message, prime continuity, constitution, and all that jazz is actually worthwhile. So being invisible as much as you can is great. Streamline on here for efficiency, because we haven't got anything which is knocking our efficiency that much. So, you know, might as well have Streamline on there to help out a little bit or even more of the amount of marks that we can put on an enemy. Prime Flow, because we want to have a lot of energy so we can mark as many enemies as possible with one cast of Blade Storm. Umbral Vitality and Umbral Intensify. Umbral Intensify is going to increase the amount of damage that Blade Storm does at base, and then that's obviously going to be increased by Umbral Vitality. Umbral Vitality is on here just to increase your health and also buff up Umbral Intensify. Cunning Drift is on here for more range, because this is the amount of range that I'm comfortable using on Blade Storm, Teleport, Smokescreen, blah, blah, blah. Cruise Projection on here to strip away enemy armor. The bleed procs do go through the enemy's armor, but having Cruise Protection on here is just going to make it so that you're just dealing more damage overall. So you can use this build versus armored enemies as well. It's totally up to you. And that is pretty much it. Now, your arcane choice on this build in particular, on the other two builds, it doesn't matter too much. But on Blade Storm, if you use Arcane Trickery, because the ability counts as finisher attacks, then you have a 20% chance if you're using two of these to just go invisible, which is going to help out with the cast of Blade Storm again if you want to keep on using it, right? So, yeah. So, I mentioned melee combo counter. You want to be using the Venka or the Venka Prime, because this weapon or these weapons are going to build up your melee combo counter very, very efficiently. You can get the 3.25 times melee combo counter in pretty much no time, right? And then, of course, the Rising Storm augment that we have on here is just going to make it last even longer. You may even want to pair this with the Naramon Focus skill tree, because there's an ability in there, I think it's called Power Spike, which allows you to maintain more of your combo counter for longer. So if you want to go full on with Ashe, then that is exactly what I would do. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this versus level 165 Corrupted Heavy Gunners, because these guys have the most health. And we're going to jump into the middle here. We're going to make ourselves invisible. We're going to go into Blade Storm. We're going to put as many marks as we can on all these enemies. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and recast. And you'll see that my decoys just go in 3.1k damage per hit. And then as they keep on going, damage just keeps on getting higher and higher and higher. Let's go invisible again, and whenever this ends, whenever that counter down the bottom right hand corner is over, so it's over now, we go back into Blade Storm, mark them all again, and then let it go again, and you can see that they deal even more damage. So the damage just keeps on going up. And what you really should be paying attention to is that melee combo counter down in the bottom right hand corner. So as that gets higher, so it's 3.25 now, then the damage that your decoys are going to be dealing is also going to get higher. And if they're dealing more damage base, then those bleed procs are going to get even higher as well. So they're dealing 10k damage now. So the idea is to keep your melee combo counter as high as possible. And then, of course, your decoys are going to deal even more damage, which is great. So let's just go ahead and finish that guy off. And then let's start on this new group. So we mark all those guys, let it go. And we've ran out of energy now. This is where Energizing Dasher come in. So you just go into your spoiler mode and then do your thing and get your energy back, 5 energy per second. I'm just going to jump over here. Again, trying to keep these videos as spoiler free as possible. And you can see that we're dealing 4.4k per tick on those enemies with the slash procs right there. And we still have our 3.25 combo counter. So, you know, 10k on that original slash proc. I think that was just the damage being dealt. So yeah, 10k damage per hit from a decoy. Pretty damn good. And like I said, this ability can be buffed up by the likes of a Rhino's Roar or a Chroma with his Vex armor buff, his Fury buff. Any sort of damage increasing ability is going to help this ability out, which is why it can be insane versus just armored enemies in general. Because, like, if I had somebody in here using a Rhino's Roar to buff me up, we might be, like, getting rid of half the enemy's health with one cast of Blade Storm. That's just how it goes. So, yeah, at the minute we're getting away. Like okay, well, that's almost a half. That's almost a half just on our own. So it's a pretty fun, pretty cool build, pretty unique build, and it's definitely worth messing around with. You can build around it is what I'm trying to say to you. And it is just, in my opinion, one of the coolest abilities in the game, honestly. So because you can join in on it, right, just by teleporting, which I didn't have enough energy there to do. But it's great. I enjoy it a shit ton. Ashe is definitely one of my favorite frames for playing with newer players, because I can just use this to kill a bunch of enemies and they're like, whoa, how are you jumping around the place and all that jazz. And it's really, really cool to see. So anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead, hit that like button below. And if you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye, chat. God damn it, I'm not streaming on Twitch. Goodbye, YouTube people. Bye-bye.